Join. Start this. Let's say hello. Hi, Nicola. Okay, so I'm hoping that Katie and David will join momentarily. I'll have to just let them in a minute. Oh, here they are. And then we can begin. So I will start by just moving forward. So the last few weeks or last 2 weeks, we've been looking at downward facing dog as our kind of pose to explore and to come back to. So it can be quite challenging on the wrists, as with injury, it's kind of hard to load, but also for the shoulders. So tonight we're going to now focus on rib cage and on shoulders. Hi guys. Oh, I don't know if I've muted everybody. I might just mute you. Yeah, no, you are all muted. So rib cages, shoulders, and also side bend and back bend. So a lot of the time we spend in a posture that tends to take the head out of alignment. And what we want to do is really start to find a way where the bones support us and the muscles move us, rather than the muscles supporting us. If the muscles are used to support us, and they're not postural muscles are things like the psoas, the deeper postural muscles within the core that we can't really see. Those are designed differently. They're designed to be on all the time. They're different muscle fibers. Muscles like the trapezius in the back of the neck, if they're used to hold the head in position, to support the head, because it's out of alignment or against gravity, our skulls weigh around 12 pounds, something that's ridiculously heavy weight, same weight almost as the pelvis. So there are two opposite ends of the, is that a stone? It's almost a stone, isn't it? Yeah, something like that. So it's an extraordinary amount of weight. And those muscles tire quite easily. So you'll get stiff, sore shoulders. So what we want to do is, and it's so subconscious, we spend so much time being in that shape, that then the muscles on the shoulders also start to come in on the front of the shoulders. They shorten, they fatigue, they overwork and get tired, and they get harder, and more tense and less mobile, and they don't come into that relaxed position, which is a resting position. And they're not fluid passing over each other, all of that lovely stuff where everything functions together. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. We're going to look at finding ways to invite a slightly more open front of the body, to invite those muscles to start to lengthen. And we do that through gentle back bends and through, some of you may have heard of the pose camel pose. Has anyone heard of camel pose? Yeah, it's quite, I wouldn't normally teach it, but I've discovered a way in the beginner's class, but I've discovered a way of teaching it that I'm hoping is going to feel seamless and effortless. So you can let me know. That's what we're aiming for tonight. Yeah, but just going careful. Has anyone got any disc issues? Nobody's told me any lower back disc issues. I don't think anybody. Bulging disc, yeah. Have you had any discectomy or any surgery on it? No. And does it give you pain when you go into anything that we do? No. Okay, so just be really aware of it, because we certainly don't want to niggle that. We want to find that length in the lower back. Okay, yeah, and then we'll finish with a little meditation called the inner silence meditation. So I'm going to sneak in. Last week we did about 10 minutes of meditation, 7 to 10 minutes. And then I'm going to sneak in a visualization. So it's a sensory journey, basically. It's a really nice way. I remember when I first practiced it with my teacher, and I was just like, oh, I didn't know. So it'll hopefully make more sense when we do it. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, I'd never been journeyed around my senses in that way. So it's a really nice experience for us to have towards the end of class after the movement. So let's begin by just coming onto our backs, feet flat on the floor, knees bent. And just starting by finding a nice little relaxed shape. So whatever you need to do, take the time to move the feet And maybe even drop the knees together. Maybe move the feet a little wider and allow the knees to drop together. This can really help the lower back to release more towards the floor, and also the back of the sacrum and the SI joints, the sacroiliac joints on the back of the pelvis to relax, to release. And this is a very nice place to be if we've got lower back ache at all. This is a place to come back to. So, you know, even spending maybe 10 minutes in this shape, just allowing everything to start to settle on a regular basis can be very, very helpful. And then today, what we're going to do is just drift the arms up overhead, palms facing up, and just sort of fly the arms out above you and just let the arms sort of reposition. So maybe you take the wrists nice and wide, the elbows come wider, just to let the arms settle. So just take a moment to wriggle through the rib cage, maybe letting one shoulder blade tuck underneath again, so that everything through the upper body can start to then settle back down to the floor. You can roll your head from side to side a little, just letting the eyes soften and the breath start to flow really easily, just in and out a few times. And maybe taking a deeper breath in and just letting the ribs really expand, almost like they're puffing up away from the floor, and then exhaling out of the mouth. We'll take 3 breaths like that. Deep breath in through the nose. And then one more breath in. And just letting it go. And then gently sealing the lips and allowing the breath to come in and out through the nose. So this is Ujjayi Pranayama. This is the subtle restriction at the back of the throat, softening around the jaw, the face, and just letting the breath gently travel in and out of the body. And there's a yoga teacher called Angela Farmer, and she's always said that the most advanced yogic practice in breathing is the undisturbed breath. So it's, you know, looking at this breathing practice, the Ujjayi breath, this long, smooth breath in and long, smooth breath out, this really subtle breath. And just letting the body settle. Feel the lower ribs, back of the waist start to become heavier. And then take your awareness down into the belly and feel this little ballooning up on the inhale. So we're not holding any tension in the lower belly here. We're now allowing the breath to come down. So as the diaphragm draws down from its relaxed dome position, like an umbrella, it draws down and flattens out to bring breath into the rib cage. And as that happens, that creates less space in the lower abdomen, so the belly starts to balloon up. And see if you can just allow that to happen. It's not like we're forcing, we're just letting any tension go around the lower belly region. And you're just noticing this beautiful ebb and flow. So there's a soft breath in and a soft breath out. It's almost like a little rock pool. As the water comes in, water flows into the rock pool. Seaweed nudges around, maybe the level of the water comes up. And then as the breath goes out, everything hollows out a little bit. And there's a gentle floating down towards the spine of the belly. So there's no effort here. You're just allowing the body to breathe as it needs to, and the arms to be heavy. You can roll through the back of the head and the neck just to remind the skull to release to the floor. See if you can soften around the eyebrows as well. Take your awareness there. Allow all the tiny muscles around the eyes to release. So the eyes are like the 2 little pebbles just floating from the surface of a lake in these little puddles of water. So there's a soft dropping backwards of the eyes and the eye sockets, relaxing around the jaw, the tongue. Good. And then all we're going to do is bring our awareness back to our knees. Start to bring the knees hip distance apart, and then walk the feet back down into feet at hip distance apart as well if they were a bit wider. And then we're just going to gently drift the left foot up. We're going to start by taking the hands around the left leg somewhere. And we're just going to start by giving the left leg a little massage with the hands. So squeezing from the thigh, just giving a little wriggle to the thigh muscles, the front and the back, just to remind that leg to start to switch into a little less gripping. And you can work your way up, bending at the hip and the knee. Just take your hand around the lower leg somewhere, giving yourself a little squeeze and a little, yeah, I like to do this with my eyes closed because it helps me really feel into the leg. So you're letting the body rest backwards, the shoulders are softening, you're starting to warm up and roll the ankles, spread the toes, do whatever movement you feel is good for that left leg, rolling the leg, wriggling, rolling the feet, spreading the toes, and then drop the left foot back down. Pause for a moment, feel the difference between the two sides, and then gently drift the right foot up towards the sky. I don't know if it's my right leg that, maybe I should start on my right leg because my right leg always feels much more stiff. I don't know why. But this side. So notice the difference and spend some time just kind of letting the muscles kind of loosen a little, you know, a little bit of wriggling, a little bit of rolling, a little bit of massage, squeezing gently, bringing your awareness into the leg, letting the leg wriggle and wake up a little. So it's almost like the toes can kind of spread and you're rolling through the ankle joint, a little bit through the hip, through the knee. And then taking the hands, bending the knee and taking the hands around the lower leg, squeezing around the ankle. We haven't done the foot actually, sorry, just coming to your foot, maybe squeezing, spreading the toes. And if it's not comfortable, if you can't reach your foot, I think everyone can reach your foot, but sometimes you can't reach your foot, you can come into a more upright position with the upper body. You can sit up as well and do this. And then just make sure you're squeezing the foot. So you're really starting to wake up the awareness in the foot. And then drop that foot back down. Come back to the left foot because we've got the left foot. So squeeze around the left ankle, squeeze around the ankle, squeeze around the heel, squeeze around the lower shin, and around the feet. So our feet are really important and we often forget them. So this is our foundation. So just becoming a little bit more familiar with them just through the sense of touch at the beginning. Good. And then roll the toes, wriggle, release the foot back to the floor. You're going to drop your feet through the floor and start to just drift the pelvis up, drift your arms up somewhere overhead. So your arms are nice and loose, the palms are facing in, and there's a sense that, you know, the arms are kind of like just jelly. There's more of a loose feel, almost like they're ribbons kind of blowing in the wind attached to, you know, a railing or something like that. And these arms can be very loose and they can sort of fly out above you. And you'll notice that if they drift too far and kind of touch the floor, maybe your ribs start to open up a little bit too much and the front of the shoulders pull a little. So just play with maybe tipping the arms back up a little bit, bringing the fingertips more towards the sky to let the fronts of the shoulders relax back so the collarbones start to sort of loosen off rather than become tight. So you play with that with the pelvis lifted. Pelvis doesn't have to be high. You can keep the pelvis really low, or you can even drop it back down and just play with the arms. So for the next few moments, just spending the time to sort of explore how the rib cage relates to the arms at the moment. Maybe seeing if you can breathe into the ribs as you drop your feet through the floor, and that maybe the ribs can expand a little, maybe the collarbones start to loosen and broaden, and the arms are a bit more kind of moving. And then we're going to combine that with a bit of breath. So as you exhale, you're going to lower the pelvis back down and just drift the arms back down with the hips dropping to the floor. And then inhale, you're going to peel the tailbone up, drift the arms up, Play for a breath or two in a more bridge shape, and then come back down on the exhale, lowering down through one section of the spine at a time. So notice if you start to hold your breath, or if you rush any part of the movement. And see if you can slow that down. Give yourself time to explore and to feel into the shape. So all you're doing is drifting the arms up. You may stay in a sort of lifted position with the arms being nice and floaty, and then flow back down through the spine, using the exhale to soften everything back to the floor, and then finding an inhale and then exhaling as you lift. So don't worry too much. Just doing a kind of movement that feels good to sort of wake up the body and start to bring your awareness into the spine. Good. And then we're going to come back to a bridge pose with the arms lifted. Now dropping the arms to the floor above you. You're going to then roll your pelvis back down to the floor through the spine, letting the pelvis rest back down. And then you're going to extend your heels. So you're going to lengthen your legs. So you are finding your heels reaching out away from you. Your toes are pointing up towards the sky. So we're lengthening out through the heels, and the toes are pointing up through the sky. So if you were to reach the arms away from the feet, you're sort of lengthening through both sides of the body. And then all you're going to do is take your right foot over your left. So you're crossing your ankles with the right foot on top. And then you're going to take your left hand around the right wrist and start to edge your way over into a little side bend to the left. So your left hand is taking your right wrist, and you're going to pull in that sense of creating space into the right side ribs. Okay, so if you're not sure, does that all make sense to everybody? Yeah, using your breath, you're going to find a little bit of a side bend, keeping kind of space in the shoulders, so the shoulders don't roll up off the floor, you're keeping nice and flat. And then you reach down through the right heel, and then up through the right wrist. So you're coming into a little bit of a side bend. And then you're going to come back to center, uncross your legs, and take your opposite foot on top, and then the opposite hand. So you're going to this time take your left wrist with your right hand, and then draw yourselves over to the right hand side. So you're coming into a little half moon shape side stretch onto the floor. Good. And then come back to center. We're just going to do each side again. So find your uncrossing your feet and come into. So now see if you can, instead of just using the upper half of the body to drift over, and you can take yourself into a slightly deeper space as everything starts to release. See if you can now take your feet. So you're making a banana shape. Take your feet in the same direction as your wrists, and your pelvis in the opposite direction. So you're really bananaing your body. Breathing, inhaling, exhaling, and then softening and coming back to center, and then over to the second side. So you're really finding your left foot coming on top, right hand around left hand, and then you're finding a nice side bend space in the whole of the ribs. So the ribs are starting to fan out, but your left shoulder is resting back to the floor. So you're feeling space in the side waist. And then don't forget the feet. So see if you can really make a banana shape as much as you can as you reach long through the arms. Good. And then you're going to come back to center. And you're going to bring yourself rolling onto your bellies, back over onto all fours. So you can tuck or untuck the toes. We're going to come into a few cat-cows just to start to mobilize the spine. Remember, you can always come down onto your elbows if that's more comfortable, or move your wrists out. Another variation for the wrists for you, Adam, is you can roll the mat up, so there's a lot more space underneath, height underneath the wrists, and that can be quite nice. So if anyone's got sore wrists, we don't need to have sore wrists for whatever reason. So we're going to exhale, rounding out through the spine, finding that lovely cat arch as you drop the head towards the floor, tailbone drops towards the floor. Inhale, come back to center. Make sure you're not locking your elbows. So finding a flow from side to side. So we come into an extension as we inhale, a gentle little back bend here, lengthening through the spine, broadening across the collarbone. So crown of head, tailbone reach towards the sky. Belly drops towards the floor, rounding out, exhaling, finding the hands resting through the floor as you start to find a nice arch. And using a pace that flows with your breath. So see if you can just come back to your breath, which is that lovely Ujjayi breath, in and out through the nose, also known as ocean breath. And it's an undisturbed breath, soft around the jaw, soft around the face. So letting the rib cage start to undulate, start to create more space between the ribs. These little muscles in between each of the ribs is called intercostal muscles, and the ribs are rather like a Venetian blind. So if one of them moves, then the rest can oscillate and move at the same time. So see if you can just find a bit more movement into all of the lower ribs, the upper ribs, the side ribs, beneath the shoulder blades, and just allow a bit more space for the breath to come into those areas. Good. And then we're going to start to find a neutral spine, flat back. So pelvis, shoulders, and head are in one line. You're going to tuck your toes and make sure you spread your fingers. So really press into the index finger, mound of the index finger. And that will start to wake up the forearms. And as you tuck your toes, you're going to lift using your core. You're going to lift your knees and float them an inch or two off the floor. And then back down on the exhale. So as you inhale, you're going to lift. Exhale, hold, inhale, hold, and then exhale, lower. So we're going to do that one more time. Lift, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, lower. Good. So there's no rush. So we'll just do it one more time, and then this time we're going to lift up a little bit more, keep the knees bent, and then come into your downward facing dog. So you're really using your thighs to do that, using the legs to help to move you, switching on the legs to help bring your pelvis up rather than using the upper body, and then pedaling the heels and the ankles, starting to prime the legs there to work to help us in our standing positions. So you're pedaling your ankles, just starting to warm up through the shoulders. Make sure your shoulders aren't locking. So as you come forwards, you can bring your shoulders more over your wrists and maybe give them a chance to wake up a little. You can lift and roll one wrist and then the other wrist. Good. And then we're just going to simply walk the fingertips back to the toes and find our way into forward fold. So forward fold can be any kind of shape. It doesn't have to be the full forward fold. You could go into a half forward fold. We're hinging at the hips and we're finding the feet about hip distance apart, and then exhaling, resting into the heels and finding the thighs traveling backwards. So you don't, if it's not comfortable for the lower back to drop the fingertips towards the floor, just coming into the half forward fold where your hands are resting on your thighs or your shins, and the spine is long, coming out of the pelvis through the crown of the head with space in between each of the vertebrae. Good. And then we're just going to bend the knees more deeply, start to warm up the legs as we come up into a chair pose. Turning the palms of the hands in. See if you can loosen through the wrists. Sit a little deeper. Lifting the upper body up. Notice if we start to go into an inner dialogue of, gosh, my legs have gone into gripping and holding, which is fine. That, you know, that might happen. So just come out a little bit. Give yourself a little bit more space. Give yourself a bit more space to breathe, and then exhale and rest in again. So there's no kind of drama. If it becomes too much, come out. We're not trying to force ourselves into shapes. We're trying to invite ourselves to kind of create a bit more sense of grounding so the body can rest into those positions. So of course we're using muscles here to hold ourselves into these shapes. So this is a prime example of when we do need to use muscles to help support us. But it's the postural muscles that we want to use, and short-term muscles here to build strength rather than prolonging ourselves in certain postural positions using the wrong muscles. And then exhale, fold forwards, tip the fingers down towards the floor or come into your half forward fold for a breath or two. And then we're just going to add back to that. So there's these three shapes. You're going to pad your hands forwards and come back into downward facing dog. So you've got downward facing dog. You can always drop your knees back to the floor if you need to. But there's downward facing dog, and then you're going to walk your fingertips back to forward fold again, back to your feet for a breath or two, and then bend your knees and come back up into chair pose. So you've got those three shapes. You're just going to flow between them for the next couple of minutes at your own kind of pace. A little bit of self-practice, just feeling into those shapes, feeling through the breath. It may be that tonight you feel like you want to flow a little faster, just to warm up. So maybe you can kind of let these shapes be more fluid, and you get a flavor from each one. Or maybe you're feeling that actually I just need to be in a forward fold for a little bit longer tonight. So you're just going to use that as an opportunity to feel into this shape. See if you can rest into the feet in all of the shapes. Or maybe find an effortless chair pose shape. So you can play with that a little bit, come out and come back in. So for the next minute or two, seeing if you can find some kind of connection through the three shapes with your breath. My advice is just to close the eyes and to go inwards, to use the movement to connect seamlessly through your breath. Notice where you're holding tension, whether it's in the breath or around the jaw, or maybe around the shoulders. Sometimes a little bit of movement can help, just to loosen off, to wriggle, and to let go. So these shapes are slightly more challenging for a warm-up, but they're good because they're going to start to allow the muscles to wake up. Now, this is my second class teaching today, which in itself is not a problem. But I did do a 2-hour surf lesson today, so I'm a bit like, which was my first time surfing. So if I can do this, you guys can do this. Because I'm tired. So we're going to do a little bit more warming up, flowing through the three shapes. So just find your way back up to chair pose with the fingertips drifting towards the sky, and then sitting down nice and deep if you can, keeping the arms nice and wide. So we don't want to kind of scrunch up around the ears. And just take a look in at your feet. You might have a tendency to collapse inwards through the inner arches. So see if you can keep your knees in line with the two center toes. And that, what can help with that is just lifting and spreading the toes. So nice active feet. And the arms can be nice and wide. Good, and then all we're going to do is take the hands and cross so genie arms, elbows on, hands onto opposite elbows, and then you're just going to start to lower down a little bit, maybe focusing on helping support your lumbar spine by using the sides of the waist to gather in, so that as you sit down, a little lower, coming back up, keeping the elbows nice and high, so the upper body doesn't keep dropping forward, so we're not hinging at the hips. Good. And then this time you could maybe lift the heels off the floor and come down And then back up a few times. See if you can really wake your feet up, and you might want to come back up and just pedal the heels a little. And then we're going to come down and back up. Lifting tall through the crown of the head. We're going to come down completely to the floor, drop the hands onto the floor, and then find your way into child's pose. So I'm just going to tuck my foot, as I was saying. The pointed flexion on my ankle is not right today, so keeping my toes tucked is an option for you as well. What we're going to do is rest forwards. So if your forehead doesn't come towards the floor, that's absolutely fine. You can take your pelvis over the knees instead. So you can be in a more upright position with the pelvis if it doesn't come back down towards the heels. And then we're going to just take the fingertips. So if your elbows are resting on the floor, that's great. Soften, the fingertips are pointing towards the top of the mat. So soften through the shoulders. But now what I want us to do is reach the fingertips. So we're going to lift the elbows off the floor and reach the fingertips towards the top of the mat. And then you're going to take your wrists shoulder width apart. And then lift the heels of the hands up. So the palms of the hands come up. You're tenting your fingertips. You're keeping the fingertips towards the floor. And you're lifting your wrists and your elbows off the floor. And they're the same width as your shoulders. And now all you're going to do is lift the forehead off the floor if it was there already. And then walk the fingertips over to the left-hand side. And breathing into the right ribs, you're going to draw back and down through the right sit bone. So you're coming into a little side bend, breathing into the space between the ribs here. Deep breath in, exhale, soften and release on the exhale. Let your heart melt towards the floor. Come back to center as you breathe in. Walk the fingertips back, keeping them shoulder width apart. Now walk them over to the right hand side. So you're going to reach long through the left fingertips, back and down through the left side of the pelvis. Deep breath in, exhale, soften and release. Good, and then we're going to come back to center. So bringing the pelvis back over the knees. So you're coming back up to all fours position. We're going to exhale, drop the left elbow down to where the left wrist was and turn over towards the right shoulder. Draw your belly button back towards your spine and wriggle through your right shoulder, letting that shoulder release in little circles if you can. So you're kind of just letting it wriggle and roll. Come back to center. So left hand comes back to left elbow, where the left elbow was. So wrists underneath the shoulders and then dropping over to the other side. So right elbow down and then turn your gaze over your left shoulder. So notice if your belly drops towards the floor, if your spine starts to arch in that way, and see if you can keep the pelvis stable and in neutral position rather than tipping forwards. And then wriggle through the left shoulder, tucking the chin so that we're not kind of dangling through the head. There's a nice sense of lengthening through the back of the neck. So the crown of the head reaches away from the tailbone. Just one more time on each side. So you're starting to wake up through the rib cage. So you can wriggle, let go, lengthen through the spine. If you can, untuck your toes and press down through the tops of the shins so the pelvis stays nice and stable. And then just back to the second side for one more go. Deep breath in, exhale, release. And then when you come back to center this time, we're going to find a little bit of thread the needle. So you're going to take your left hand underneath your chest, and then you're going to sweep open, lifting your gaze towards your right hand. See if you can keep the pelvis level. So bring your pelvis back, look at your hips. If they've swung out to the right, bring them back to center, and then bring your right hand through. As you exhale, sweep it underneath the left hand side and through. Inhale, bringing up, opening up, and then exhaling as you twist and sweep your right fingertips underneath you. So you can do a few like that. Inhale, sweeping up, exhaling. Okay, And that's just the thread the needle prep on that side. Swapping the hands over, so take your right hand down in between the center of the chest and then sweeping the left arm up. Oh my God, I realize how much tired my arms are when I'm doing this. 2 hours in the water, I think that's quite enough. Actually, it wasn't 2 hours in the water. Highly recommend it though. They've got boats almost like that you float on. It's very easy. Good. Okay, so come back to center. Give yourself a little wriggle and a roll. We're then going to tuck our toes. Oh, actually, let's just do... Okay, so this is Anjaneyasana. So what you want to do is just have a little look this way. So there's a couple of variations. The most important thing here is the tops of the feet are tucked and the hips stay over the knees. And your knees are around hip distance apart. What you don't want to do is start to take the pelvis back behind you or forwards. You want to find that stability. And then we're going to work through the shoulders. So if your shoulders are kind of holding, go carefully. See if you can find the movement and let them get used to this by using the breath. Okay? So you want to go maybe one arm at a time. So you're going to bend at the elbow and then you're focusing just on one side. And then you sort of reach the fingertips out away. And then as you exhale, you draw the pelvis away from the wrist and start to find the rib cage traveling towards the floor. So going with one side at a time. If you feel your shoulders are okay with that, then you can start to find your forehead coming more towards the floor as the tops of the feet press into the floor, but without any sense of holding or gripping. And maybe if you're finding that that's accessible, you can take your chin towards the floor. So using one arm at a time if that's comfortable. So just coming into that shape from all fours. Keep your pelvis above your knees. Press down through the tops of the feet. Lengthen through the crown of the head and tuck the chin so you've got that sense of alignment. And then slowly walk your arms forwards. Get a feel for both the hands being forwards and dropping the chest down. And if that feels too much, then bend one elbow and see if you can visit one side at a time. So know which one you're working on. Just notice which shoulder feels tighter as you travel. Maybe visit very briefly on one side and then travel to the other side if you're doing one at a time. And see if you can use your breath. So seeing if you can loosen off, let the rib cage release, let the shoulders release, the front of the shoulders by the shoulder blade. Reach the fingertips forwards. If you're working with an injury, then going very gently. This is just an invitation. So you don't need to work too far. That's nice, Rose. Good. Lovely alignment of the pelvis above the knees. That's great. And breathing, coming in and out whenever you need to. So there's a real sense of letting the shoulders release. Lovely. That's great. Well done, Kirsty. And doing half variation is really good, because if you're not used to doing this shoulder opening, then what happens is you tend to hold your breath or hold the tension in the jaw, and that will increase the tension in the shoulders. So just going slowly and letting that kind of be an exploration rather than an exercise. Good. Okay, so then we're going to come back to center. Lovely. We're going to come back to center and we're going to come up to, got to keep an eye on time. We're going to come up to all fours. So I'm going to use a blanket because it's much nicer for my knees. If you need to, you can roll your mat over and do that as well. I recommend you bringing a blanket, as I said, because the winter is coming and it's nice to have a blanket for the final relaxation. And I also like to have a blanket for support. So take your knees underneath your hips, come up to kneeling, tucking your toes. So we're starting to find that stability and through the pelvis. So I just want you to take your hands to the front of the hips and start to feel the hip crease. So you're going to take your pelvis back depending on how comfortable this is, some toes don't like to have too much, too much work through that toe joint. So they're not used to bending and flexing. So see if you can kind of just take your seat back to your heels and then back up. Maybe that works for you. Maybe you can rest onto the toes. There is a floorboard that creaks. I don't know if it was your toes. I think it might be the floorboard. And also knees, yeah. So be really kind to the knees. So if you can rest on the toes just for a little bit. And of course you can come back out, taking the weight off and just give them a little tap. I'm not going to do too much on the feet. There is a sequence for our feet, but it just is too much for my ankle at the moment. So that's just a little flavour of it that we'll come back to later in the term. So we're going to look at gate pose now. So just coming back up, you can tuck or untuck the toes, finding what makes you most stable. So you're going to make sure that your left hip is aligned over your left knee, and then take the right foot out. Toes are pointing forwards, and press down through the outer edge. Lift your toes, so the little toe side is pressing down. You want to bend your knee to help you do that. Yeah? And notice if your pelvis has drifted over. See if you can keep your pelvis over your hip. And then all we're going to do is reach the palms up, palms facing in. And find that lifting as if the rib cage is lifting off the pelvis. So plant down through the whole of the foot if you can. That's it. Press down through the little toe side. Toes pointing forwards. That's it. So it might be more tricky depending on how the foot feels. And then you're just going to drop your right hand down. So you're not going to weight any weight into the left hand. Right hand, I'm mirroring. So then you're going to sweep up through the left fingertips, creating more space in the side body. And you're gently going to exhale over without dropping the pelvis out. So notice if the pelvis drops out of alignment. I'm cheating because I've got a video monitor in front of me. It's like having a mirror. So I can really find, and as you come over to the side, see if you can draw a little bit more support through the sideways. So belly button draws back towards the spine, and then come back to center. Give a little wriggle, come over to the other side. So find that stability first. Make sure you find that sense of alignment where your center of your hip joint, his knee is underneath that. So you're going to keep that. Take your left toes out. They can be a bit further in front of you so you don't feel wobbly. Yeah? And then press down into the little toe side. Toes are pointing forwards. You can bend in that knee if you like. Lifting tall through the arms. See if that's lost that stability. See if you can find almost like there's belly button drawing back towards spine and space in the side body. As you reach nice and tall, dropping the left hand down. You're going to find a side flexion in the spine, so you're not rolling forwards with the right shoulder. I'd rather you come in and out a few times. So lifting yourself back up and then exhaling and rolling over. So you're using your breath to invite a little bit more space in the side body as you reach the right fingertips over. Inhale, come back to center. Good. Okay, so we're going to look at our side bend going into a back bend. So what we're going to do here is tuck the toes. And that little bit of prep that we did here to take, you can also do the same thing here, and just take yourself back and forwards using your toes to find that support. So you're going to warm up your thighs here, exhaling, seeing if you can find the pelvis and the shoulders moving in one line rather than dropping back down through the seat. So you're going to stabilize through the front body as you rock back a few times, making sure the knees are really happy. Yeah, is that okay, Penny? That's actually a good option. Do you feel stable? Good. Okay. So now what we're going to do is add a little side bend to this. So you're going to reach up. I'll do it from here. You're going to keep your knees hip distance apart, and then reach up and over. and roll back a little bit and then come back to center. And actually we can make it more generous. So we can start with our fingertips over that way and roll up and sideways and then back. So pelvis ducks back, almost like a sitting position, and then open up. So you're lifting your heart and flowing. Oh, my knee's cracking there. So you're flowing a little bit in circles, circular kind of movement. So you're really focusing on the shoulders and the ribs and the breath as you do that. And then we'll come back to center and then take it on the other side. So you can just wander through. Maybe the circles start a bit smaller. Maybe you're not really lifting the pelvis forwards. So as you come into your side bend, you're starting to find the hips traveling forwards rather than backwards. So just feeling it, making sure you're supporting the lumbar spine and gently coming into a bit of a back bend, but with the heart lifting. Okay, so whichever arm you're lifting up, the other arm is going to drift behind you. So I'll show you from the side. So making sure the lumbar spine is happy and you're coming through a little bit of a back bend. Eventually what you're going to do is take your back hand to your heel, maybe, and then maybe your heart will lift, maybe your other hand can come. Now, before you do that, I want to just show you. So, yeah. So, just up until that point, yeah. So I just want to show you, because there's a couple of precautions through the lumbar spine and also through the neck. So as you're coming back, you're going to potentially come forwards with the rib cage and lift through the heart as you come back. But you need to have the openness through the arms. So it's better to take the hand behind you and externally rotate the upper arm bone to take the hand there so that the shoulder can open, because the scapula is then going to come down the back body so that the shoulder opens from the front. And then maybe you just stay in the half position, right? So that's perfectly fine. But to protect the lower back, we need to maybe sit a little lower in the pelvis and keep the crease in the front of the hips. Rather than pressing the pelvis forwards, I want us to find the lift in the shoulder joint, the heart space, and the openness in the shoulder joint. Rather than doing this, because that just jams into the lumbar spine. So I'd rather you be in this shape more, and then over time, you can come into the back bend. So the other part of that, the awareness needs to come into the neck. So when we go into this shape, it stresses the nervous system. And so I don't recommend putting the head back. Okay, you can, there's definitely yoga practices that do that. But for us, what I want you to do is tuck the chin and keep the neck long. You're going to end up with a double chin, and that's fine. But your neck's going to be safe, okay? So when you come out, you're going to come out potentially with a little roll to the side rather than straining to come out forwards. So don't overdo it. Just get a flavor of it. Remember to keep a little crease in the front of the hips to come in, and maybe just lifting up. That might be enough for today. Okay, so if there's anything niggling in the lumbar spine, then just finding a little lift from side to side as the hand goes back to the heel. Yeah. Okay. So you can come off your toes for a minute. You've all been sat like that. Give themselves a little wriggle and flow with your breath. So see if it can feel quite light. Make sure you're breathing. Make sure you're engaging through the abdominals so that you're not just kind of hanging out in the hips. Yeah. Come for a side bend. Remember the side bend first. So you could do the side bend or come forwards into the side bend and back, and then back out. And you don't have to do the full variation, just do it a couple of times. And then when we're finished, it's quite intense, we've just done quite a lot on our knees, you're just going to come back out, take your knees nice and wide, or keep them together. You're going to find your way into your child's pose. I find child's pose is much nicer with a nice wide knees. depends on your hips. So just have a play around and just let everything rest. So making sure that your forehead is resting onto something. If it's not resting onto the floor, grab a block if you have one, blanket, cushion, or you can fold your elbows, rest your forehead on your forearms. So when you're here, see if you can let the hips become heavy. Rocking a little bit side to side if you need to, taking the knees a little wider can help. Oh, sorry, I'm just having a drink. Good. Okay. And then we're gently going to take the hands back underneath the shoulders. Start to bring ourselves back up to all fours. And removing any support. From all fours, you're going to find your toes tucking and lifting your knees. And just finding your way back into a downward facing dog. And then actually we're just going to all drop the knees to the floor. And then take your elbows to the floor, both of them. So the elbows come to the floor. Adam, how's that for your elbow? Is it all right? It's okay. Say again? Oh, well, you go steady, rest if you need to. So what you want to do now, if you can, is just find the fingertips and palms lifting off the floor. So you're pressing down through the wrists all the way to the elbows. So you're really finding that contact with the forearms onto the floor. And then you're just gently going to tuck the toes and potentially, maybe Adam, you don't, you can lift the knees off the floor and then start to pedal into the feet and ankles a little bit. So this is kind of getting a flavour of puppy dog. And once you've got a flavour of that, you can rest your hands back down, you can drop your knees back down to the floor and just drop yourself back to child's pose again. So you can let everything soften. And that was just a flavour of the kind of puppy dog shape that we can play around with. We're then going to roll onto our backs. Puppy dog is a variation that we can play with for an alternative to downward facing dog. It's a lot stronger on the shoulders. You're going to come to your backs now and find your knees drawing in towards your chest. Just take your hands to your knees. Make sure the back of the head and the neck are relaxed so you can roll yourself, allowing the skull to roll from side to side. You can rock the whole body, rolling over onto the left hip and left whole shoulder, and then rolling back to center, letting the eyes soften, letting the mouth and the jaw relax, and just letting the breath relax. So you're just going to roll from side to side a little, letting the spine release. And then we're going to drop the feet back to the floor. You're going to take your left knee in towards your chest now and find your hands interlacing over the left knee and gently squeezing the left knee towards the left armpit. If you've got a knee injury, you could take your hands behind the knee instead and squeeze the thigh towards the left armpit. Rock again from side to side. I find that invites the knee or the hip to release. And softening across the front of the shoulders, softening around the throat, the neck, the head, the eyes. So everything in the upper body, the chest is resting backwards. And now we're going to just take off left lower leg bone. So from the ankle to the knee is the lower leg bone, not below the ankle. So you're taking the lower half, the outer side of the lower leg bone onto the top of the right thigh. That's going to, if that's confusing you, you just take the left ankle over the right thigh, but I want you to make sure it's not the outer edge of the foot on the thigh, it's more like the leg bone. Otherwise you're going to strain the left foot. Then you're going to flex the left foot, so you're pressing the left foot heel out away from you and drawing the big toe back to the shin. So nice active left foot. Take the left hand onto the left knee and gently press the left knee down towards the left-hand side of the mat. Left hand bottom corner. You can rock a little from side to side, just feel where that is. See if you've noticed if both sides of the waist have kind of remained the same or if one has shortened. See if you can take your hands to your hips and let the pelvis become level again. So notice if you're pressing your left knee down towards the bottom end of the mat, if your right waist has shortened. See if you can lengthen through the right waist again. Keeping that length through both sides of the waist, you're now going to lift your right foot off the floor, take your hands and interlace the fingers, threading the left hand behind the right thigh, interlace the fingers behind the right thigh. And then draw your right knee towards your right shoulder, flexing through both feet. So really nice active feet. And then taking your left knee down towards the left-hand side of the mat. You can rock from side to side a little, and then reach the right heel towards the sky. So you're lengthening through the right leg, your right heel lifts up towards the sky. See if you can soften down through the shoulders, let the upper body relax, tuck the chin, lengthen through the spine, and release on the exhale through the hip. Deep breath in, exhale and let go. Good. Then we're going to drop the right foot back down to the floor. Release the thigh. Take the left foot back down. We're going to come over to the other side. So just draw your right knee in towards your chest, towards your right armpit. Take your fingertips over the right knee or shin. Just rock from side to side. Check in. Both hips won't be the same. It's unlikely they will be. So just take a time to see what that feels like. And then maybe you can then flex through the right foot, take the right ankle, outer ankle, not foot, over the left thigh. So this is the sort of, if you look down, it looks like a figure 4 position, like the number 4. And remember to take the right knee towards the bottom end of the right mat. So you're finding that sort of sense of direction, but without shortening the left side waist. So see if you can keep the pelvis level. And then maybe just interlace the fingers, flexing both feet. Fingers become, you might need to lift through the upper body to take your hands behind the thigh, but fingers come in behind the left thigh. Flex through both feet. So that will keep your knees nice and safe, and then you can rock from side to side a little. If your upper body is coming off the floor, then you can maybe, over time, find it settling back down. And you maybe drift the left heel up towards the sky. If you want to take it a slightly deeper variation, you can bend the left leg and interlace the fingers over the shin rather than behind the thigh. So that can help to release the hip a little more. But only if the upper body feels nice and relaxed. That doesn't feel right for me today. So I'm just going to let everything go, drop the feet back to the floor. And we're going to just come towards our final resting pose now with a little meditation in Shavasana. So if you want to take a moment to put a pair of socks on. It's still quite warm, the heating's on, but I'm just gonna find a blanket and then I'll take you through the guided relaxation and meditation for the end of class. So, oops, that's very dark. So we're going to find our way onto our backs, and you're gently going to maybe take a moment to position the feet a little bit wider so the ankles and heels are wider than hip distance apart. And if you like to, you can roll the toes in and out a few times, just to allow the legs, really from the upper legs, from the hips, to roll in towards center, like one whole limb, and then out. So the whole of the leg bone is rolling in, toes roll in, ankles are heavy, and then rolling out again. And once you've found enough of those rolls to let the toes just go floppy, let them drop out to the side, laying the arms down. And just starting to settle. So starting to really rest everything in contact with the floor. So just taking a moment to readjust if you need to. Let the shoulder blades tuck underneath you so you can let the shoulders release back towards the floor. You can even readjust the head if you need to. Just rolling from side to side. So you're really nurturing that sense of comfort. So we can come into a more symmetrical shape, maybe, that just allows the nervous system to start to rest a little. And then slowly we start to come back towards a relative stillness. We can start to take our awareness to the sounds around us, to the sense of sound. And if you're in the room with me, you may hear the sound of the trains above us, or maybe traffic, or maybe sounds of the river or boats. Whatever it is, sounds around you, maybe outside the room that you're in. Just starting to notice those sounds. And then start to draw your awareness inwards and notice sounds within the room surrounding you. And then slowly starting to draw your awareness a little further inwards. Maybe noticing or beginning to notice the most intimate sound to you, the sound of your breath. And you may notice that your awareness gets drawn away to other sounds. And that's fine. Just gently inviting the awareness back to the sound of your breath, the sound closest to you. And then, after a few breaths, see if you can then start to take your awareness to the sense of touch. So the sense of contact with the surface beneath you, and becoming completely absorbed in the sense of touch, noticing covered and the difference between covered skin and uncovered skin. So just taking your attention to the cool temperature maybe of uncovered skin. And the sense of contact with the floor. So really traveling your awareness around the whole of the body, from the back of the skull, shoulders, arms, ribcage, waist, all of the areas in contact with the floor. So you're completely immersing yourself, your awareness in the sense of touch. And then gently taking your awareness to the sense of touch on the tip of the nose as the air gently travels in through the tip of the nose, through the nasal passages. You feel the sense of touch, of movement of the air across the skin. And then with that, drifting your awareness inside the nasal passage, inside the nose, taking your awareness to the sense of smell. And it may not be a strong smell of cooking or pungent smell. Here we may notice the smell of the estuary outside, the seaweed or whatever it is, just completely immersing yourself in the sense of smell. And now drifting your awareness through the back of the throat towards the mouth and the closely related sense of taste. So drifting your awareness across the surface of the tongue, seeing if you can notice any maybe sweet or savory, sour, whatever possible subtle sense of taste you can be with in this moment. Completely immersing yourself in the sense of taste. And then with the eyes still closed, drifting your awareness up to the space behind the closed eyes. And bringing your awareness to the sense of sight behind the closed eyes, almost as if you're looking just beyond the closed eyes, out into the space beyond. And you may see light or dark, or patterns, stillness, movement, maybe texture, you may even see color. Whatever it is, just see if you can take your awareness to the sense of sight. And be with the sense of sight. Notice when you get drawn away and gently come back, inviting your attention to the sense of sight. Notice what you can see, even with closed eyes. Completely relaxed, completely at ease. Gently now drifting your awareness to the most intimate sound, again, your sound of your breath. The sound closest to you. And resting your awareness here on your breath. Notice if you drift or if the mind starts to sabotage that attention. That's perfectly natural. Just simply bring your awareness back to your breath and just allow it to rest there. The practice is in the returning. Every time we notice As soon as we notice, it may be a long time, it may be through a whole story of memories or thoughts. But as soon as we notice, simply returning, without any judgment, your awareness to your breath. And slowly, as if we're using sound as a bridge from our inner world towards the outer world, see if you can start to take your awareness outwards, noticing sounds around you in the room and wider sounds outside in the wider world. So we're expanding our awareness and now starting to bring some movement back into our bodies by wriggling our fingers. Maybe bringing some movement back into our toes. And gently starting to roll the wrists and the ankles. If you've got space above your head, you're gently going to drift the arms up. Reaching the mind water bottles. Reaching the fingertips above you. So you can bring a deeper breath into your body. Beautiful. And then just gently letting that go. So just resting down, rolling over to the left-hand side, using your left arm as a pillow for a moment or two. So just reminding ourselves not to rush out of this kind of space that we've just relaxed into too soon. But whenever you're ready, you can start to use the hands to help you to come back up to sitting. Just allowing the head to be the last thing that comes up, coming towards an upright position. We're going to close the class this evening with 3 ohms, so the sound can resonate more as you practice it. If you want to practice it, you can. If not, you just enjoy the sound in the room around you. So we sit nice and tall, keeping the eyes closed, palms facing up either side of the body, soft bend in the elbows. We'll just do one movement as we sweep the arms up with the breath. Take the palms up and then exhale as the hands soften back down, turning your gaze down towards your heart. And then we'll do 3 ohms as we breathe in, deep breath in. Exhale with Om. Om. Deep breath in. The final breath in. Just bowing your head towards your heart, just for a moment of gratitude, showing that gratitude for yourself, for making it here this evening, and for sharing that practice with me and everybody here. So namaste. Thank you very much. You can open your eyes and bring yourself back into the rooms. I forgot I was going to ask something about the meditation, but now I'm pretty relaxed and I can't remember what I was going to ask you. How did you find it? That's a good one. Was it kind of, yeah, it's a nice simple one to do. It helps you become aware of your awareness more, I found. Yeah, it's like you kind of forget. We know we've got these 5 senses, but yeah, what does it really feel like? So it can be quite grounding. Anyway, I can't remember what I was going to say. Might email you. Good, well done everybody. Let me know how you feel in your lower backs, because if something's come up, then I'm hoping that felt okay. But it's quite nice to come into that back bend in that way, but if it's niggling in the lower back, then we shouldn't be doing it. Okay. Do you practice? Oh, I didn't upload anything this week, did I? No, I didn't. I uploaded a thing about a side bend. I'm sorry, I've got a bunch of them to upload, so I shall do that. Videos, so we can practice a little bit, even if it's just tucking our toes and sitting on our heels. It's quite a good one between classes. It can be very helpful. Yeah, just slowly. Or even the Anjana Asana, the heart opening one for the shoulders is quite helpful. Yeah. Good. Okay. You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Say goodbye to these guys.
Thanks, Hannah. That was lovely.
Yeah, take care.
See you later.
See you soon. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. See you the weekend. Bye.
Bye, Penny. Take care.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Nicola. I'm in the dark, but be in touch. I'll speak next week.
All right,
okay.
thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.